everyone, welcome back to the Hardware News Recap for the week. In this one, AMD has lost its goddamn mind. Also, I'll be driving out to see Wendell again this weekend for a big investigation we have coming up, but can't get into what it is yet. Additionally, an NVIDIA employee detained for alleged smuggling-related document falsification activities. That's right, from the same company whose boss said that there's no evidence of chip diversion. Also, CXMT ramping its memory production. NVIDIA has become the bank of OpenAI or something, and more. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermaltake and the TR200 WS Micro Chassis, a Micro ATX stout case. It includes an optional 5 1/4 bay for either a screen or 5 1/4 drives. The case has a highly perforated side panel, a color accent front styled like other popular cases, can fit radiators and closed-loop liquid coolers in the top, up to 360mm claimed support, and a total of 7 120mm fan mounting locations between the top, bottom, and rear of the case. Max CPU tower cooler clearance is claimed at 175mm and GPU clearance at 365mm. The chassis provides a portable, highly compatible box for your builds. Learn more at the link in the description below. All right, up first, quick update on the GN side. So like I said, I'm going out to see Wendell this weekend with Tannen and Vitaly. I think we might already be done with that trip, but I don't know when this is going live. But around the time this goes up, we'll be out there hanging out with him for a pretty major piece. It involves a lot of things like security vulnerabilities and devices spying on you. But anyway, we'll come back to that soon. Additionally, we have restocked our Micro Slop shirts. Those have been the most popular shirt I think we've ever sold, so thank you. And of course, this is because everybody loves Microsoft and they want to pay tribute to Microsoft by wearing a badge of it. Now, unfortunately, we misspelled it. We accidentally wrote Micro Slop when we made the shirt, so it's just, somehow they just keep coming out that way. I haven't gotten around to fixing the typo. But anyway, they're back on the store if you were waiting to get one. We've just restocked it. And our shirt printer for these is in Vermont. He's actually been doing our shirts for, I don't know, somewhere around 10 years now. It's a pretty small shop. I think it's basically 2 people running the shop for the most part. And I was originally introduced to him from Paul and Kyle. I was talking to him about the Micro Slop t-shirt because of its popularity. And we thought it might be fun to film a Micro Slop shirt factory tour, by which I mean his print shop and him printing the stuff. But then he said if we go out there to film the silk screening process where he uses water-based inks, he's an expert on the process, been doing it for decades, we could learn a lot. But he said if we go out there to film it, he's gonna put me to work on the line making the thing that I buy from him as free labor. So I believe the phrase he used was, woohoo, free labor. So anyway, we might film that if you all are interested. And I think it would be fun. I don't know, hopefully people want to see a video like that. But he's been doing it for decades. We can learn a lot from him. It's not a tech topic in a way. I mean, there's technical aspects to shirt printing, but it's very different. I just think it'd be fun, and I've never actually seen his shop in person. So we kind of want to do that and make a fun video of the Micro Slop shirt factory. It's not a slop factory unlike the Microsoft ones, but it makes real stuff with an old school, relatively manual process in a world filled with AI garbage. So that might be a fun opportunity for us. As another update, we now have the Steam Machine plates in stock and shipping. So they're no longer back ordered. The last few orders of ocean blue colorway are going out now. And then from today forward, everything ships as the orders arrive since we've gotten ahead of the demand for them. And then finally, we're gonna take down the sale for the Retro IO coasters soon. So if you wanna get them while they're still on sale for $10 off, you can head over to the store.gamersnexus.net. All that supports us directly. And with that, into the news. So up first, AMD has lost its damn mind again. The company announced its new RX 9050 GPU, a 50 class GPU that is $280. That's right. And don't worry, they've got a 4GB model too for OEMs that has a, I'm not joking, 64-bit wide memory bus. The last time I talked about a 64-bit wide memory bus was probably the GTX 1630, which was 2022, and even that probably was too recently. Like before that, I don't know, the last time I might have seriously talked about like a real competitor with that width of a memory bus was for sure like 2010 to 15 range, maybe. I don't know. Like the RX 580 might unironically be better than a 9050 with a 64-bit bus and 4 GB of memory. I'd have to test it, but On paper, I think it might be kind of close, which is terrifying, because that is an ancient video card. Anyway, they think that they've got the new winning strategy, which is instead of NVIDIA minus $50, AMD has iterated and innovated on its process. Now it's NVIDIA minus $20. Wait, that doesn't seem better, actually. This editor's cut. Well, hopefully the editors cut that part, because that would be embarrassing if we said that that were an improvement. Almost as embarrassing as AMD launching this device. The 9050 is a low-power GPU that somehow still manages to require a power cable. It uses a PCIe 8-pin cable, and the $280 card has 16 compute units, 8 gigabytes of GDDR6, and it has a GPU that doesn't seem equipped in a way that deserves the 92-watt typical board power that it lists as a requirement. ASRock posted a 4 gigabyte model RX 9050, showing an alternative SKU with the same 18 gigabit per second memory, but a comically bad 64-bit memory bus. The 8 gigabyte model runs a 128-bit bus, for reference. The ASRock 4 gigabyte model still has an 8-pin power connector, somehow is still not slot-only power, and the 4 gigabyte model is intended for OEMs and not for retail. But as ever, we think it's a manipulation tactic to use the same name and have the RAM. And worse than that, have the memory bus width. AMD knows damn well what it's doing with this. We think it's manipulative, and it's misleading for people not in the know. And it can even be misleading for people in the know, because it's easy to mistake a part with the same name that swaps one number at the end. Like the GT 1030 as an example, when it had, I think it was GDDR5 was base, if I remember correctly, and then they had a DDR4 model where it was like half the performance sometimes in our testing. It's pure misleading. It's just to sell units to people who don't understand. It's way worse. It's basically a different product. It is literally a different product. It just happens to have the same name with a number changed in a way that most people won't recognize. The slot power cards are valuable for packing as much performance as possible into something that doesn't use a power cable. They're great. I love cards that don't use a power cable because there's very specific use cases where they are awesome. And this is not one of those. That's right. It should be. But somehow they decided they were going to go for 92 watts instead of stick to the 66 watt 12 volt limit or 75 watt total slot power limit for a PCIe slot. So not only is it not slot power and requires a cable, it is also really damn expensive at nearly $300 for the 8 gigabyte model, and it's misleadingly named with the 4 gigabyte model. So as we said, AMD has lost its goddamn mind for this particular video card launch, and once again, an RX 580, I don't know, man, I'm gonna have to break it out and see if we can get it running with the games we run today, and just test it versus the 4 gigabyte model or something if we even get the 9050s in, because it is genuinely one of the worst specs I've seen on a video card of this class in, I don't know, like, since probably the GT 1030 DDR4. I think even the GTX 1630, which is not a great card on its own, I think even that probably ranks a little higher for sort of specs of the time, especially with the price considered. This might be the worst I've seen in nearly a decade. So congratulations to AMD. And let's go to the next story, which is in another installment of Jensen Huang's series, which was called, what was it called again?
And there's no evidence of any AI chip diversion. We've repeatedly tested and sampled data centers around the world and found no diversion.
That's right. No evidence of chip diversion series. We have definitely not smuggling related, not activities that are getting closer to not NVIDIA and not Jensen Huang in Taiwan. NVIDIA CEO has been busy this past week tweeting about Denny's, with the restaurant saying that Denny's and NVIDIA, quote, know the importance of staying open, end quote, and showing a Venn diagram with their similarities. They left some things out of the Venn diagram. For example, the last time I went to Denny's, over half of the products on the menu were not available. So they also have that in common. The Keelung prosecutor's office in Taiwan has been busy since just before Computex, busting GPU smugglers, and now the prosecuting branch of the department has detained an NVIDIA employee. Taipei Times quoted the prosecutor's department as saying that the suspicion specifically relates to, quote, falsification of business documents under criminal code. The prosecution stated that the detained NVIDIA employee is, quote, strongly suspected of having committed the offenses and that there is a risk of flight, destruction of evidence, and collusion with accomplices or witnesses, end quote. And End quote from Taipei Times as well. The Times wrote that a source told them that the, quote, NVIDIA employee was identified as a person involved in the case after investigators analyzed the relevant evidence following the previous round of searches targeting Supermicro, end quote. The investigation pertains to around 50 Supermicro smuggled servers, previously targeted in a smuggling bust from a few months ago that we covered on this channel. Ever since our black market documentary about GPU smuggling, Jensen Huang has been busy dismissing GPU smuggling allegations every time he's asked in public. His team has likewise stated that smuggling is a, quote, non-starter, end quote, even though a bust previously named Supermicro employees in a $1 billion GPU smuggling and chip diversion operation that utilized dummy servers to fool inspectors, and we covered that on the channel as well. That's a pretty good non-starter. I wish my non-starter ideas were worth $1 billion. That just seems like a lot of money for something that doesn't start. I would imagine, feel free to correct me if I'm stepping over my line here, but I would imagine most people actually in the audience would start a lot of things for $1 billion. It actually seems like the opposite of a non-starter, like a starter. Seems like one of those. Anyway, to learn more about that story, you can watch our Black Market documentary for free on YouTube, and then the follow-up, the Supermicro $1 billion smuggling operation. And hopefully I haven't overstepped my boundaries by assuming that $1 billion is actually a lot of money for, you know, probably almost all of us. I mean, except for you, Jensen, and Lisa. I assume they watch. I mean, probably not, let's be real. But anyway, up next, consumers can't get a break. So memory stick maker Apacer, which buys memory supply from the big three and puts them onto sticks, says that the memory supply impact it thinks is getting worse, as DRAM supply availability could fall 70% in 2027, and that's on top of the already steep reduction in supply. This story follows stories a few months ago about memory module makers taking on massive lines of credit to buy memory supply, as they were at risk of replacement cost exceeding existing inventory sales. Our own report included G.Skill and Corsair in the Collapse documentary, commenting on the memory situation. Digitimes, which is paywalled and not readable, said via other reporting that 60% of DRAM capacity is allocated to enterprise business solutions now. A 70% reduction in consumer DRAM supply would mean, to the extent possible, the bottom falls out even more from consumer electronics, but at this point we're at a point of singularity where it's like the price increases don't even matter anymore because it's already so high that no one's building anything. I mean, it's kind of like, it's like if the price of a Lamborghini goes up by 10% or whatever, you're just like, okay, I wasn't buying one of those anyway, so I'm sorry to hear that, I guess. I don't really, we're past the point. It's just coming across as a cruel joke at this point. The suppliers of the memory, of course, have reasons for people to think that it's perpetually scarce, which is mostly boosting the share value of the companies. However, a company like Apacer doesn't really benefit from such scarcity as a buyer. Likewise, the big three saw major stock price drawdowns in the past week as CXMT posted huge numbers, which we'll talk about in a second. Separately, the latest price hike news comes from a report from GNBFF Bloomberg, which we found via Reuters. Qualcomm reportedly warned customers that its SoC prices will increase by double-digit percentages. The rumor anticipates a September 1st effective date for new shipments. Counterpoint Research suggests that Qualcomm has about 23% of the global smartphone chipset market share, most directly rivaled by NVIDIA partner MediaTek and then Apple. Qualcomm supplies ARM solutions for lower performance devices, including the incoming Steam frame, and this price increase could possibly impact Valve's frame pricing or decisions. When it announced its Steam Frame VR headset in November last year, Valve told us that its ceiling for price for the frame would be no higher than the Index was selling for at that time, which was $1,000 for the most expensive SKU, if I remember correctly, with whatever bundle it had. So that would have been the ceiling if they can stick to that commitment. Fortunately for Valve, import documents indicate that the company has been stockpiling shipments for months now. Since Qualcomm's price increases are projected for September or later, existing inventory would be unimpacted by this. But having brought in supply already doesn't mean that this pricing won't impact Valve's decision-making for the frame. It's already kind of late at this point, but no company wants to launch a product and then increase its price 2 months later, even if they have a valid reason like their supply costs went up, because it just looks bad. It looks, I mean, most consumers, especially those not in this space, would look at it like, how did you not know, how did you not factor that in? And now I feel like I got rug pulled with the promise of one price and it's gone up immediately after. So that can definitely affect pricing for companies. Not sure what Valve's going to do. Their promise set a clear cap of $1,000 or so based on the index pricing at the time. So hopefully they can stick to that. They're going to have to weigh whether they want to price in future increases, though, for things like SoC supply now and, of course, memory supply. The frame is a small part of the SoC market overall, so the real impact will be to phones, where Android devices will soon reflect the price increases of SoCs, memory, and storage, if not already. Phone company Nothing recently stated that memory made up somewhere around half or more of a phone's price, with the SoC making up the next most significant portion. So the frame, kind of the least of the concerns in terms of broad market impact. Really, it's phones where you're going to see it. We previously published a documentary called The Rise of Chinese Memory that covered CXMT, or Jiaxing Memory Technologies, from China, and its development of competitive DDR5 memory, also the sort of complicated ban-unban history. The company just launched its Shanghai IPO recently and found success. CXMT's IPO claims that it now has 7.67% of global DRAM share, which is up from about 5% last time we talked about their positioning. That's the most anyone outside of the big three has held in years. The IPO saw a meteoric 466% climb on Monday that CNBC says made, quote, CXMT the most valuable China-listed company, end quote. The publication also notes a $5.2 billion USD operating profit in the first quarter, an improvement on the $418 million loss of the prior year. CXMT previously broke into the DDR5 DRAM market at a somewhat breakneck pace. We talked about the various intellectual property sort of conflicts between all the different memory companies over the years in our documentary on CXMT and YMTC. For its reward for being competitive in DDR5, CXMT garnered interest from Apple, where Apple is now looking at using CXMT as a chip supplier for its products. Apple previously looked at YMTC, and when the rumors came out about Apple considering YMTC for NAND flash supply, where YMTC is pretty advanced for SSD technology manufacturing, the US government immediately responded to the rumors of Apple considering buying from YMTC by banning them. CXMT has also had a sort of storied history of bans and unbans, where it was banned by the US government, and then earlier this year, it ended up on the list for being removed from the entity list. So basically an unban. But then the Pentagon sent a letter complaining about that to the bureau managing the list, and the redaction was removed, but it wasn't really clear if CXMT is banned or unbanned at this point. It's like Schrodinger's entity list or something. As long as no one looks at it, then we don't know what the status of it is. And so it's kind of sitting in limbo at this point. Apple's allegedly looking into CXMT, which would bring more US government attention to the memory supplier if it doesn't already have plenty. The past week or so, the Wall Street Journal posted a story stating that NVIDIA will provide backup funding availability to OpenAI to the tune of $250 billion. That's right. $250 billion. It's like 1/4 of an Elon Musk. The journal states that the upcoming data center project will cost 1/2 of an Elon Musk. It's enough that it just seems made up at this point. And ChatGPT, the journal says, will rent a 10 gigawatt SoftBank project. OpenAI has several promises coming due this year. They've made a lot of 2026 promises, and so we may be witnessing a scramble as the company tries to clear some of its commitments, especially as it's prepping for a rumored IPO. It did confidentially file. We covered that already. And maybe they're trying to kind of clean things up to look a little better for an IPO launch or something. The journal said that Epstein associate Howard Lutnick decides who gets the power for the project, which is US government owned. This also may explain why Altman has lately been so obsessed with trying to pass off GPT as a utility rather than a subscription product.
Intelligence is a utility like electricity or water, and people buy it from us on a meter and use it for whatever they want to use it for.
As for NVIDIA's part, the journal says that, quote, NVIDIA would guarantee a series of financing vehicles intended to make lenders feel more confident that the funding behind the project is secure, end quote, noting that this would be a $250 billion guarantee to, quote, cover the data center lease and debt needed to fund its build-out, but not the NVIDIA chips that would go inside it, end quote. No, because OpenAI would still need to buy those from NVIDIA, which is providing the backstop funding. NVIDIA has likewise promised various vendors that it would lease back underutilized GPUs from the companies that it sold or leased them to then use for stuff, creating a recursive circle. It's like it's just somehow it's maybe it's starting to look like the infinity symbol, or maybe it's like a tri-bar, except it's a circle. I should patent that before Apple does as a shape. OpenAI is currently at around or over $1 trillion in commitments and over the next several years, and revenue doesn't seem to support it. We just talked about that as well in a video, but this latest is pretty good. The bolstering outside investor confidence by taking promises of NVIDIA backstop funding for renting or building data center infrastructure, but not buying the NVIDIA GPUs, but then using the other money they didn't use to buy the NVIDIA GPUs to put in those things to maybe lease back to NVIDIA. Just hang on, I'm having a flashback to this, where let me just check. It's just like GPUs and Jensen and the Juan Foundation, and then it kind of, yep, still a circle. Yeah, it's just let me just check my work. It's carry the $1 trillion. Yeah, it's still a circle. It's actually nested circles. AMD CEO Lisa Su can't be left out of anything that her more successful cousin Jensen Huang does, and so AMD is also committing to more circular funding. This past week, the company announced a new Anthropic strategic partnership. AMD announced that Anthropic, maker of Claude, will deploy 2 gigawatts of MI450 GPUs with AMD's new Helios racks. AMD says the first gigawatt goes online next year. The company announced its commitment to make what it calls a, quote, strategic equity investment, end quote, of up to $5 billion in Anthropic. And we know how well the family keeps its promises. When Jensen Huang, cousin to Lisa Su, promises, for example, up to $100 billion to OpenAI, and then gives it a third of that, okay, that's not a good example of them keeping the promises. But surely AMD will do better with this. And surely Anthropic and Claude can use this additional horsepower to continue to leak shared Claude conversations onto Google from a dork search, just like MSI did with its warranty records and Zotac previously. That's right. You didn't hear about that, you should look it up. I'll just tell you, that's what the news is for. Fun fact, if you Google searched for certain strings to pull up parts of a URL schema for Anthropic, you could find shared conversations with Claude. That's right. If someone shared a link, it was capable of being scraped. It was being indexed by search engines like Google. And I think, as far as I've seen, this has been resolved by now. But this is the same thing that happened to Zotac when we covered them, where you could search site : like whatever it was, zotac.com/warranty or something like that, and just pull up like literally every single customer upload for warranties anytime recently. So kind of that same type of simple search where it's not even a malicious attack or anything. It's just the dumbest possible way to find stuff on the internet, and that was working on Anthropic. So maybe the billions of dollars of AMD hardware can help fix that. AMD says that it'll work with Anthropic to, quote, optimize workloads for AMD Instinct GPUs, end quote, saying it'll adopt Claude for its, quote, engineering and product teams, end quote. Great. AMD, the company that finally got its driver situation under control, is now going to start vibe coding, just like NVIDIA. Can't wait to see the dark ages of drivers we go back to, like we've done with GeForce. Up next, a new $650 billion data center project for South Korea in the works with SK Hynix, the memory maker, one of the big three. The South Korean government planning to build out 18.4 gigawatts of AI data center solutions. As with all these other data centers, especially with the rise of things like flock cameras and surveillance everywhere all the time, with it's not just dumb CCTV now, it's like actually capable of tracking you, knowing everywhere you've ever been and storing that indefinitely. It does seem like AI data centers are particularly useful to governments for their surveillance capabilities, for storing information on potentially billions of people around the world, and as they travel from one place to another to start building profiles on them. And we think a large part of these build-outs, the reason that there's so much corporate interest in government partnership when historically they've been very, no, I have bootstraps, I will do it myself, thank you, seems to be one, bailout plans, which we've talked about, and two, because governments would very much like the ability to log all this data, as we've seen with Flock, which is technically a private company, but somehow is being implemented through governments across the US, and they all have partnerships, and they've had open access exposures of their cameras, feeds, and anyway, I'm getting off track here. Fuck that company. But the point is, data centers have value to governments, not just for AI and generating Will Smith, although that is very important. Anyway, the news from South Korea is that it wants to, quote, secure the core elements of AI faster than any other country, end quote, just like everyone else. And so it's aiming to build 8.4 gigawatts of capacity by 2029 and increase it to 18.4 gigawatts by 2035. Light reading says that the South Korean government will, quote, subsidize setup of infrastructure by providing these massive structures with discounted electricity rates and streamlined land and water rights, end quote. As someone who just had their power bill go up by 40%, okay, I guess I need to register myself as a data center or something. Maybe that's what I should visit Wendell for. The report makes a disturbing use of the phrase token economy, partly echoing some of Jensen's prior statements about GDP being equal to compute. That's enough frustrating news for the week. Let's talk about something important, near and dear to all of us. Noctua's color combination for its fans. They're working with Prusa, the 3D printing company, again, to bring the actual, I don't know if you get a certification for it, but the actual certified Noctua brown and beige colors to PETG filament for 3D printers. They already launched PLA previously, and we used it to build the Noctua fans we bought Noctua fans, then we ripped the hubs out of them, and then we put them into 3D printed Noctua fans using the CAD files from Noctua that they published on the internet. Okay, it was not an efficient use of Noctua's fans, but it was a fun project. We made a video on it, and now, because they're doing PETG for this, it's easier to print things that need the higher heat tolerances that PLA doesn't have. So Prusa and Noctua have announced these, matched to the actual brown and beige colors for Noctua's fans. Noctua says that it's launching this colorway in PETG for better mechanical toughness and thermal stability, showing the filament pictured with custom printed GPU shrouds for Noctua's existing 120mm fans. This is an old mod approach. It's not a new idea to strap case fans to a GPU cooler. It actually works really well every time we've done it over the years. It's a lot quieter normally too. But the reason that this can be problematic with PLA starts to have structural issues around 55 to 60 degrees Celsius or so. It starts to soften and weaken. And if it's mounted directly to a metal heatsink and contacting it for something like a, say, 450 watt GPU, then that can definitely cause problems. So PETG doesn't have that same issue. And that's, really the news here is just that it's going to be in a new material now. And I wanted something that was fun to talk about, like 3D printing a shroud for a GPU, because that sounds nice right now in the light of everything else. It is expensive. It's $33 for the filament for each spool, so relatively expensive. But anyway, maybe we'll do that one like we did for the fans. That was a fun project. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching. As always, go to store.gamersnexus.net to support us directly, or patreon.com/gamersnexus to help us out there. We've actually published 2 behind-the-scenes videos in the last couple weeks. If you want to see those are on Patreon. It's me bumbling around the office doing random things that I need to do at 5 a.m. So if you want to see those, it's on Patreon. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. We'll see you all next time.